Greetings. All right. Welcome to this segment of Get the News Straight. I'm your host, Glenn Sutphin. With me on this segment is Chris Dorsey, and you wanted to talk about the rigged elections, which is kind of like redundant considering they've always been rigged.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that doesn't know that they're rigged is, I don't know what to say about that.
In need of a brain transplant.
Yeah, I mean, the selections have always been rigged. I mean, they started out rigged. They will continue to be rigged as long as we have them. So, but yeah, let's get into that since it's in the news about Trump saying, he doesn't want the elections rigged, and the White House coming out saying, we're not going to rig the elections. No, you're correct. You're not going to. You already did. There's just put it as it is. But
I just want to make it a point that the elections are so rigged that they have to address the fact that they're rigged and use the word rigged, because we started seeing Bolshevik Jew Bernie Sanders talk about the rigged society and how everything is rigged, so that you might think that Bernie Sanders doesn't do anything but sit around and watch Skype interviews between you and I. It seems like he's, forwarding a lot of our talking points about everything being rigged, because it is. It's obvious. The financial system is rigged. The news is rigged. The sports are rigged. The elections are rigged. Everything's rigged. So we know that. And Bernie Sanders, I mean, it was meant to be this way, but he was the victim, allegedly, except for he agreed to all of this, from the beginning, from decades ago. Basically, his supporters had their votes so obviously discounted that this became an international news story, the rigging of the Democratic primary. And so Donald Trump is now talking as if the elections will be rigged, and that will be the reason why he loses the elections, if he does lose the election. And I will agree with him. If he loses the election, it's because it was predetermined that he was going to lose the election. If he wins the election, he will win the election because it is predetermined that he will win the election. And there is absolutely no validity to the fact that if you think that you go in and you press a button on an electric voting machine, if you think that your vote counts in any sort of way, you're not very smart, and you're very wrong. If you think that if you go in and you fill out a ballot and you stick it in a box, and that they're going to count all these ballots and, in the box up, and that they're going to give an accurate accounting of the voting of the American population, you're very wrong and you're not very smart. So we can go through.
It would be the first time in history they did it.
It would be the first legitimate election, which brings up the point that not only is the 2016 election rigged, but the 2015 elections were rigged, the 2014 elections were rigged, the 2013 elections, the 2012, so on and so on and so on, going back, and we know this going back to 2000, we know it going back to the Nixon-Kennedy race in the decade before now. We know it, the Lincoln election. We know George Washington used to rig elections in certain ways and manipulate the people.
Yeah, I mean, ever since the inception of elections, they've been.
Yes.
It's a three-card Monte. I mean, come on.
So let's get into a couple things here in Virginia where we verified recently that the elections are rigged. And we have And when we say we, all these videos, this is an intelligence debriefing to the public by the Virginia and Maryland militia. So that's what you're seeing right now. This is what the militia is doing. This is the only thing that we're doing at this point, and we are engaged in propaganda war against our enemies, and we're telling them the truth, and they're doing nothing but lying to you. So when we talk about elections being rigged in Virginia, of course, we don't have any further to look other than Richmond. We know that the balloting process and the elections in the Commonwealth of Virginia are fixed. We know that tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of votes have been disappeared over the past election, where, just here in the city of Richmond in 2012 and 2013, in 2013, 5 entire precincts recorded 0 votes. There were 0 votes for 5 precincts. That's about 12,000 votes in the city of Richmond. 0 votes. 5 polling places. Imagine you go to your polling place and your vote and every other vote of every other single individual who got in the car, rode their bike, walked down to the polling place, however they got there, every single one, not just from one precinct, but from 5 precincts during the presidential election of 2000, it disappeared. So at a very satirical prostitute, a.k.a. Barack Hussein Obama, election, and he allegedly won Virginia. But really, do we really know that? Because we got 12,000 people whose vote just disappeared. And then when we talk about Virginia, we have, 15 to 20,000 dead people and household pets that are on the voting rolls.
Yeah.
And
dead people and pets. Yeah, that's really, really beyond
not 5,
amazing.
Not 10, not 15, not 100, not 200, not 500, not 600, not 1,000, not 2,000, not 5,000. 15,000. Yeah. Okay. And that's what we know about. That's what they're telling us about. That's what the people
God knows how many it really is.
Are telling us.
Yeah, and we're relying on the people that are cheating and lying for the information. So
about their cheating and lying.
Yeah.
So imagine what they're really doing when they can't cover up anymore. Because that's where you and I come in. Because we investigate and discover things, but mostly we discover what they can't possibly cover up. Like the things that they are doing underhanded that they can cover up, they covered it up. We don't know about it. But what they can't cover it up. And another thing that happened during the Republican primary, getting back into the segue of Donald Trump and the rigged elections, Donald Trump should know because he's won nothing but rigged elections. And we know here in Richmond during the Republican primary and the Democratic primary that in Richmond on Jank Road, what is it? Maybe a mile. I'm saying this is 2 miles away. But yeah, maybe a mile away where we're sitting right now on Jank Road in South Richmond, voters during the Republican primary in Virginia were receiving ballots that had already been filled out. Not only were they receiving ballots that had already been filled out, the ballots that they were filling out that already been filled out were being handed to elected officials who we know very well. We know Kirk James Showalter, the criminal. We know Cecilia Dabney, the criminal. We know all the criminals that run the Virginia State Election Board, Virginia State Board of Elections, the Registrar of Richmond, Jane Kirk Showalter, who's always in charge of rigged elections, to flip them around multiple times. Mike Herring won the Attorney General back in 2013 as a result of a found voting machine They just found a voting machine. One person was winning one day, and they were like, oh, no, we found a voting machine in Richmond. Oh, now we have a new winner. But what she's doing this time is that they're stuffing the ballots into duffel bags. That's what they did this time, because there was we didn't even touch on Teflon Terry McCullough having the experience of thousands and thousands of voters from 2010 to 2015, where they're pressing the button to vote for one individual, and they press the button and it actually votes for another. That actually allegedly happened to Clinton consigliere and Jeffrey Epstein pedophile ring associate Terry McCullough. Oh, and of course, Chinese agent Terry McCullough. So Terry McCullough is experiencing this election fraud firsthand. So what happened? They got rid of all the electronic voting machines in Virginia, and then instead they're giving out ballots now that are already filled out, and after filling it out, they don't put it in a secure lockbox. They stuff them in duffel bags. That's what happened. So if there's confidence in the system whatsoever, I'm going to just say, just end it now. Just go and walk in the middle of the traffic. Don't do that because you might take somebody else who's not. Just know yourself. You are not, you're living low potential. If you don't realize all the elections are rigged and that nothing but criminals control your government and they're illegitimate, and the folks who should be in charge of government are targeted and assassinated, and in our case, attempted assassination by government, then you don't know anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
You don't know anything.
I mean, I've and it's getting worse. I mean, it didn't used to be this. It's either getting worse or it's just getting so far out in the open that because it didn't used to be this obvious.
It didn't used to be this obvious.
You know, you had to dig deep to find dirt. Now you got to brush the dirt away to find the dirt. I mean, there's so much of it. It's like they basically said, hey, we know that we're criminals and we're just going to do it anyway, and you're going to let us, so let's do it.
And that's what's happening.
And everybody goes, oh, okay.
That's reality.
We don't want to say anything because somebody might say something about us, and we got to get out of our little box. And oh no, we got to be in our safe spot, and draw chalk outline around us, and we're in our safety box now. Everything's okay. No, I'm tired of people living that way. I mean, really. And if you want to live that way, that's fine. That's your choice. Go to a different country and do it then. I mean. Yeah. Like or go jump off a tall building.
Do it. Because
just take yourself out, do what the oligarchs want, and eliminate the stupidity from the world. That's the way I feel about it. Because if you're not awake, you're part of the problem.
Absolutely. Voters are the problem. Voting is the problem. But, simple solution, and that's the abolition of government. We can restore the Constitution. If you go, oh, the Constitution is too strict, it gives too many advantages, I'll disagree with you, and then I'll go, okay, let's go back to the Articles of Confederation. And then you go, well, the Articles of Confederation were written by this and that, and now I go, okay, let's go back to our ancient, sacred common law, and if you want to argue with that, then we'll have a fight.
Yeah, I mean, basically they're against common law and natural law. I mean, it's a perversion of the law, and if we're going, let's go back to the, like you said, the Articles of Confederation, the Iroquois Convention.
Great Law of Peace. The Iroquois, Great Law of Peace, like you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's get back to living life and stop worrying about the rules that are made for government. I mean, they go, oh, the Constitution is this and that. It's not affecting the people. It's affecting the government.
And I will say,
in its form that it was written in, not in the form that we have now.
I do want to follow up on that, because I'm not going to give up on the Constitution, because if the Constitution were enforced, you and I would be in charge and our enemies would be executed. So, and when I say you and I would be in charge, I mean the people would be in charge of their government. So, under the rules of the Constitution, if the Constitution were enforced, the government would be immediately abolished, and rule of law would be restored. The Pentagon would be liquidated. The Federal Reserve Bank would be liquidated, and there would be new forms of monetary policy and military policy. And the mainstream media and those who own and run the corporate Zionist-run media would be executed, and the public airways would be given to the public and the people. And there you have it. So that's the plan. Basically, they go, what's your plan? You want to abolish the government. You think that the leaders of the government will be executed. I'd say, well, I mean, that's what the Constitution said. I didn't write the Constitution.
Yep.
It makes sense that tyrannical, treasonous traitors would be taken out of office, and if formed to fight and protect the property of man, it is into a tyrannical tool to enslave man. Of course, it would into that law that if that happens, then that government must be abolished immediately, and that's what we're doing. We are forwarding that agenda, and we would like to, I'll participate in firing squads, for these government officials and Jewish bankers. I'm not going to be above doing that, because it's for the best of humanity and the planet, and that's for all living things, not all God's creatures, not just the ones that God is capable of self-destruction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm all for the abolishment of the government, and we need to evolve away from government. I mean, it was a good experiment, and it ran its course, and like every experiment, it's time to put it away and do the next thing.
Okay, I just want to make a quick point on that, because what we have is virtually, and I should say, it is almost a worst-case scenario for government. So I don't want to judge all government by a worst-case scenario for government, because government simply means mind control of the mind. And
I believe in self-governance.
Right. When we have a common law system where there is no criminal activity unless you harm the person, harm another, man, woman, or child, there is no crime. Unless you cause harm to another man, woman, or child, and then you are responsible to them. You're not responsible to a government. You're responsible to compensate the individual that you harmed, or group of individuals that you harmed. Government is it's a mind map thing. This is their electric magic nonsense, where they want to take a two-dimensional creation and think that they can use that to control the masses.
They've done real good with it. I mean, come on, look at what they've done with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ever since Plato's Republic. I mean, come on. It's been that long, and people, it's like, come on, if you follow the history, but that's the problem with now. People don't follow the history. They don't look into things. They just listen to what they're fed and go, oh, that must be true. I mean, I sometimes fall into this. Even me doing this, it's like you just take it as commonplace, some of this stuff. You go, okay, must be true because I read it. Well, wait a minute. I'm falling into that trap. You read it. You didn't look. You didn't go and research. You just read it. Somebody regurgitated it. You go, okay, must be true. Find out later it's not. Then what? Most people just go, well, I'll just stick here because I don't want to look like an ass. I go, hey, I was fucking wrong. Let me go back and re-research and make myself correct. I mean,
great
if people
point.
You know.
Great point, Glenn. I do want to say that in regard to myself as well. You know, I do a lot of research. I've experienced a lot of this stuff firsthand, and I have a unique perspective. And that is because I'm motivated to find out what the truth is, and I don't want to be spewing a bunch of nonsense. So if I'm incorrect, I don't want to be incorrect. I want to be proven wrong. So when we start out, we come up with our ideas and we do every step in order to prove what we even, you know, are 99.9% sure is correct. We go through all the steps to disprove what we're sure of before we move forward. And I do not wish to be wrong or incorrect. And if I am, I'm not married or dogmatic to my viewpoint. I want to be correct. I want to do the right thing. And I don't want to be, you know, defend my position regardless of the fact that my position may be wrong. So again, this is a lot of folks who are infiltrating these, you know, Black Lives Matter groups or these, you know, so-called alleged white supremacist groups, and they'll go, "Oh, see, well, these cops killed the black woman and shot at her child, so that's what's behind everything. It's racist, but especially racist cops." And I don't want to be on the other side where these stupid white supremacist idiots who, you know, probably in most cases are, you know, Israeli trolls, are pushing forward this narrative saying, "Oh, well, doesn't matter what happened to her because she was stupid and she should have listened to the law, and it doesn't matter because it's just another, you know, dead minority," and they say it in a much more, you know,
right, offensive
manner. But what I'm saying is, I'm not going to argue over two different lies, you know, depending on which lie I feel more comfortable with, which is another one of their forms of manipulation. You're like, "Oh, man, I don't like that kind of language, the way they're talking about this woman, so I'm going to automatically think that this is racist cops," even though the cops in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, man, what are they, like 40% African American and like maybe like 40%, you know, European American and other minorities mixed in there. So it's like a non-starter, but that's what they normally do. This can segue back to the elections. They tell you two lies, and they get everyone to argue over which lie of the two lies they like better.
Yeah, which lie sounds the best? You know, it's mind blowing, literally.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, but that's pretty much the way they do it. So maybe we can close it off there.
All right, that sounds good, man. Well, for this segment, I've been your host, Glenn Sutphin, here with Chris Dorsey, and we will talk to you again.
God bless.
Peace.